Doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. Susie Kasim. Welcome to the Guyana Dialogue. I'm your host, Shamiza Ali. Tonight, we're having a panel discussion on the Guyana's election 2025. How will the next cabinet look like, and what should the priorities look like? The Guyana Dialogue is being sponsored by a coordinating council of Guyanese based in the US, UK, Canada, Guyana, and the Caribbean. Funding support is by well-known philanthropist Dave Narayan from Dave West Indian Imports. Please welcome my moderator for tonight, Dr. Tara Singh, who is a distinguished political and social scientist. Our panelists tonight are Professor Narayan Prasad, Dr. Ravi Dev, Professor Muniram Budu, Mr. Komal Singh, and Professor Mahindra Hariraj, who will join us shortly. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening to
Good
you.
evening.
Good evening.
Dr. Tara, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Shamiza, and welcome to our panelists. Welcome to our viewers. This evening, we're going to focus on not so much on election. We're doing post-election a discussion, but just to give you an update, the PP just announced that they are more willing to work with APNU than with WINS, although WIN got more seats or will be allocated more seats in the National Assembly. So that's a new development just announced. Secondly, I think that most people have been shocked by the level of defeat inflicted upon APNU because in 2020, APNU got 217,000 votes, and in this election, they only got about, roughly around 78,000 votes. So there's a massive decline, and in every area, in every region, they had massive loss of votes compared to 2020. They couldn't even match one area with the same level of votes. Whereas the PPP, on the other hand, was able to at least get 9,000 more votes compared to 2020. But they did suffer the losses in three regions. Region 2, PPP didn't match the 2020 figures. Region number 7, which is Bartica Pataro, they couldn't match the 2020 figure. And in quarantine, where they carry the heaviest loss of over 3,000 votes there. Well, the General Secretary explained that in terms of mass migration from quarantine, but I don't know if that is true. But I think that WINS probably account for those because you have people like Vishnu Pandey and this other guy from Gaisuko, he's named Bharat. They got good following in Berbice, and they might be able to attract. I think Berbice is from where WINS got most of the Indo-Guyanese support from Berbice. That's my belief, but maybe people on the ground, you all can comment on that. But what is fascinating too is that PPP is arguing there's a landslide victory. I don't know if you can describe it as such, because they are entitled to 36 seats, APNU 12 seats, and WIN 16 seats, and Amanda Desir Party 1 seat. Starbrick News somehow they had allocated 1 seat to AFC and reduced APNU's seat by 11, but I don't think they are correct. I challenge that. I did a calculation up to 3 decimal points, and APNU will get that seat, but we'll see. And maybe you all can comment on that too, on the seat allocate before we move on to the more. But this election got a lot of things where we can learn, and it got very solid information how PVP and the other parties can strategize and how to overcome these loopholes or pitfalls Now, I'm going to invite, let's see if any, invite you short if you want to comment on the size of the voting or what. Or by the way, the percentage, the turnout is roughly 58% nationally. The, and amazing, the highest turnout occurred in Region 9, which is Rupini, almost 70%, 69%. That's where you had the highest turnout for this election. And anyhow, let's go. Let's start. Mr. Komal, since you are there with them, you're observer and you're organizing monitoring the recount as well. If you can give us a quick update, and then we can move on to talk about possibility for cabinet and other priorities in development. So go ahead.
Thank you, Doc. Look, before I say, I think I want to just make some general statement based on our observation. Um, this 2025 election, in my view, was one of the most transparent, smooth, effective election that I think I've ever seen in Guyana. I say that to say while the system remained the same from GCOM that was used with some minor tweaking, because of all the checks and balances and the utilization of public media, um, the process itself was being monitored and audited almost minute by minute as we go along. Each polling station had representative from each political parties. They had also observers from various organizations. I think if you look, you might find over 400 observers when you take all the organizations together, were scattered throughout the length and breadth of this country. The day of election was very peaceful. No report of any incident during that day. And I think the GCOM must be commended because their staff was very, very professional. The process, when you look at the time a voter takes from the time they enter the polling area and being checked and verified, the time to get somebody out of that booth is between 3 to 5 minutes. And that went throughout the day. It was very, very organized in my view. As it relates to the preliminary results that we were seeing around the place, when you looked at what happened between APNU and WIN and where APNU is today in terms of the number of votes that they have gathered so far, it's very clear and evident that the majority of persons that they have lost or voters went to WIN. And if you look at Region 4, for example, in 2020, PPP had 80,000 votes in Region 4. In 2025, they got 87,000 votes. But in 2020, the APNU AFC got 116,000 votes. When you look at what happened in 2025, APNU got 46,000, WIN got 41. A combination of that is 88,000 votes. And if you look at Region 4 and Region 3, sorry, and Region 6, you will see similar trend. All the vote that APNU have lost, the majority, 90 plus percentage, you've seen WIN picking up those votes. So it's very clear that PPP was able to increase their vote in various areas while APNU lost all their votes to WIN. And we can talk a little bit more later on why we perceive that that actually happened in this election campaign. But the political landscape right now have changed significantly. Having a party that was so old, from being in opposition and in government, they're now not even an opposition; they're the minor part of the opposition. Thank you, Doc.
All right. Thank you, Professor Budu.
Well, I want to follow up on what Komal started off with, basically like a postmortem of the elections. And I want to consider this in really two parts. One is what I would think is good, maybe better word is positive signals in the results of the elections. Firstly, I would say that the PPPC gets to continue to transform Guyana in the manner stated in their 2025 manifesto. Secondly, I think it appears that race based voting is diminishing. And thirdly, The APNU AFC policies of Afrocentric racism, equity, entitlement, and direct cash distribution of oil and gas revenues based on what I consider to be false arithmetic were losers. I suspected that all the folks voted for APNU and AFC or stayed home. But the younger folks, inoculated from colonial past, dictatorship of boredom, and discrimination, had a choice between PPPC and win or stay home. Many choose to go with win, the new kid on the block, a party that started just 3 months ago with no history. Many, and I think win has people there with questionable personalities. I do not know the reason why the voters did so, with that large number to vote for win, but humans are strongly emotional animals. We can never tell how one voted from the sort of a myriad of factors that are in this election. There's personal interest, there's national interest, there's race still, there's facts, there's narratives, misconceptions, tribalism, and quick money or free money. Fourthly, I think the call for voters to elect a minority PPPC government was not answered. And I believe in the fifth analysis, if I look at this, as Komal has said, GCOM did a great job showing the world that when the PNC, APNU, and AFC are not in power, that elections in Guyana can be run freely, fairly, and efficiently. A voter in this case can determine within 48 hours of the closing of the polls who the winner is. That's remarkable. Consider what happened in 2020. I hope that GCOM in future election will strive to announce results in 24 hours at the close of the poll. And sixthly, I think no post-election violence, at least so far. Anytime the PPPC won an election, you get violence. Mm-hmm. But I see some negatives here. The main opposition is led by a man who has no political experience, who cannot articulate any political or any policies for that matter, who dodges from answering simple questions, and who is alleged to be a murderer, a smuggler, a show-off. And I understand he's sanctioned by the US. The PPPC has work to do to convince a sizable number of young voters that they are going to be better off with their policies. In other words, messaging, marketing, and stretching out a helping hand to those voters. These voters must feel and experience that life is getting significantly better for them. Mm-hmm. And I think they have their work cut out because
okay. All right.
A sizable amount of people there.
Yeah. These are allegations made against him. He was not convicted of any crime yet.
Yes, I said allegations.
Okay, good. Thank you. Raviji, over to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, Tara, back here in Guyana. We've all been literally living the elections and the results and what might be the consequences. But I want to start from what we've been talking for about 3 weeks. You've been invited me on this program, and I made a prediction based on my own analysis of the dynamics of voting that has been changing through the years, that the PPP would have gotten 35 seats, that WIN would get 5 seats, and that APNU would get the remaining, should be about 24, and I thought AFC would get 1 seat. That was my prediction on this program, and it was my prediction in my column in the Guyana Times. Now, what we are seeing here is that rather than 35 seats, the PPP seems to have picked up one more, and we'll end up with about 36 seats. So that trend that I had predicted continued, where some felt that they would lose support, they gained support and have a greater majority than they had in 2020. In terms of win, therefore, my 5 seats that I felt they would get would have come from the PNC. So what happened in reality, whatever factors I had uh, explained their suggested performance, those factors performed even more strenuously, if you want to call it that. And they have now ended up with, I believe, what, 16 seats? So that is something that we can talk about, but it's really on a continuum of the factors, which primarily, and I'll come back to it, I'm sure, which is the new kind of politics that is sweeping not only Guyana, but throughout the world, this thing called populism, where you simplify politics into us against them, and you take it might look very simplistic, but that's how we see the world is going for that kind of casual approach towards politics. And in Guyana, we know that the wheels were being greased by money, tons of it. So to come back to it, we are now seeing a request for recounts by both the PNC. I don't want to get into this APNU business. I'm going to say it as it is. A demand for a recount in Region 4, one section of Region 4, District 4 of Region 4, and they've also demanded a recount in 7, Region 7. WIN has also demanded recounts in all of Region 4. And we have to ask the reason why these parties would that. I think the PPP and us talking as to what they'll be doing immediately, we have to examine very closely what is the rationale for asking for these recounts, because from the PNC standpoint, on the no way, shape, or form can any recount reverse their minority status, at the very best, pushing the envelope, maybe 1 seat, but it doesn't matter. That's not going to matter in the grand scheme of things. But more pertinently, win. Here it is that, as Professor Boudou said, they've appended 6 decades of history to now surpass the PNC in their performance, and they are saying that they were shorted. They are saying that they should be getting more votes. I think it's rather incredulous. Therefore, and this is the point I want to get to, we have to look at other reasons for these demands. And one of the reasons, unfortunately, is that we have seen it again and again and again, that these may simply be history repeating itself, that they want to set the ground for claiming cheated, not defeated. Cheated, not defeated. And we have heard certain elements within both the PNC and WIN talk about consequences. And in Guyana, we know what those consequences are to our great consternation. So I will close with those prefatory remarks, and maybe we can develop them as we go forward.
Okay, thank you. Professor Narayan, the WIN's leader, Mr. Azruddin Mohammed, said that if he doesn't win the presidency, there'll be trouble. What's your reaction to that?
Well, yeah. Well, Dr. Tara, I'm surprised that you changed the discussion.
No, you can make a comment and continue with the topic.
Well, I think that is all talk, because he has already bought his way in, and he can't buy his way in further. Let's face it, WIN did not grow overnight. Azruddin was giving away money left, right, and center, traveling the country, buying houses, buying this, buying that. So he was laying the groundwork. I would like to take a different view from the rest of the panelists, is that if a person, and I'm going on actual fact here and trying to extrapolate from those facts. One is that if he was willing to throw away money, giving it away just like that, what precludes him or what stops him from throwing away money towards the electorate? Because, and this has been going on for a while. It is not like 3 months, 4 months. It has been going on for longer than that. So that to me is very, very suspicious. The willingness to purchase people at varying prices. That's number one. Number two is that I think that the government is correct in saying that it would like to have an alliance, not not in terms of governing, but some kind of alliance with the APNU, because APNU is a much more respected party within sectors of the Guyanese society. Win is not. One has to not put too much emphasis on Win's gain at this time, because for one thing, we don't know the purchase price for that. Then secondly, we don't know if that can be sustained. And thirdly, we don't know that the weaknesses in the leadership and in the party itself are not clearly evidenced at this point in time. And that's why that's the reason for my differing views from the rest of the panelists. I am much more circumspect of these things given the very little data. Even though it is very little, it is an indicator of how things are going to be, because one, it's not like you're starting clean or from nothing. You already have some type of evidence. Now, in going back to Region 4, again, I don't know how Win operated within Region 4. You've heard stories of Dagi and money and all of that. Did that penetrate the rest of the population? And even if it did, one also has to consider the changing demographics of Region 4. Because more and more, if you look at the characteristics of the population of Region 4, it has changed considerably. And so we have to take that into consideration, because socioeconomic status does play a part in how people think and how people exercise their franchise. That is a proven fact throughout history. And so you can see part of that. So we have to pay attention to these indicators. Furthermore, we cannot overlook, or we cannot tend to disregard the voters' turnout. Because if you analyze the numbers carefully and you talk to some of these people, there is a clear sense of alienation. Dr. Budu touched on this a little bit. And when we talk about alienation, we're not talking about only one characteristic of alienation. Alienation includes powerless or powerlessness, meaninglessness, and a state of what social scientists refer to as normlessness. What all of that constitute? People don't feel empowered. Even though the changes are taking place rapidly in Guyana, people don't feel empowered. So that has to be addressed. People felt that when they voted, their vote doesn't mean anything. And I have done some preliminary, especially in region 5, which is a region of variable population. And these are the feedback, even though it is very, very small. Everybody knows, and Dr. Budu, who has done research already and all of these kinds of things, know that sometimes Your sample might be very, very small, but it will give you some indication of how to undertake a larger study. And so we cannot overlook these things, that despite yes, the PPP has made gains, but the PPP has tremendous amount of work to do. And they should not concentrate too much on the ramblings of a violent outcome, because where does the violence occur? The PPP should be prepared, because they are the governing body right now, and they have the authority to quell, unlike previous administration, they have the authority to quell any kind of violence. So that's my view for as
All right, thank you.
introductory.
Thank you very much. Mr. Komal, I want us to move on to prospects. The government will be installed, if not this weekend, Monday or Tuesday, will be inaugurated. Do you think there will be any significant changes in the cabinet?
Thanks, Doc. As to changes in cabinet under the PPP, I don't think we can predict that at this point in time, given the fact that when you look historically over the last 5 years, the cabinet that they were running with for that 5 years have done a tremendous amount of work to bring them to where they are today. So I don't want to predict if there will be a change in that, but definitely from the opposition side, he will obviously will become the main opposition leader, given where those numbers are right now.
When a new government is inaugurated or installed, people expect some changes. So I'm just asking. Okay, let me move.
Dr. Tara, if I can add the disclosure to our program, the views expressed by each individual on this program is their personal opinion and not necessarily that of the Guyana Dialogue.
Okay, thank you. Professor Budu, do you have any view on that? Quickly on the cabinet, you think?
I think, as Komal says, it's very difficult to predict.
All right.
I don't want to get ahead, but I think I want to make a comment on what Ravi said and what Professor Narayan elaborated on about this money issue, right? The way that money was distributed is reminiscent of what drug lords do. And, Pablo Escobar, you look at the Mexican cartel, you get the feeling, and you see what is happening there. But there's a flip side of that. It says some things are the people who are willing to take that money, right, and essentially vote against their interests. And it shows that there, as you pointed out, there is still a lot of work that the PPP has to do, right? That there are a lot of people who do not feel connected, do not feel part of the gravy train, if you want to put it that way, right? So that needs to be corrected. But I'm still worried that a lot of people are willing to be getting a few dollars, right, and sell themselves out.
Okay, all right, let me go back to Mr. Komal saying.
How about me, Taro? Am I not present?
No, I was just saying that the idea of looking at the cabinet is.
No, I would like to
issue.
Are you starting a non-equal opportunity program here?
No, I'm saying that the idea of a cabinet does not do well.
No, but I'd like to come back to.
We'll move on to.
I like to get my own say on these matters. It's very. That's why I come on to this thing, to get our opinions across, and hopefully some viewers may appreciate it. I want to go back to something that both Professor Budu and Professor Todd said in terms of the potential for violence. Where I come from, we have a saying that when blind man say he can pelt you, he don't got brick in your hand. And with to win, we don't have to guess about violence and money and what happened. The demographic that WIN has attracted and extracted out of the PNC, they have defined themselves as scrapeheads. Professor Narayan used all kinds of fancy terms to describe them, but they don't worry about those terms. They have chosen to define themselves as scrape heads, meaning whatever is between their ears, their brains have been scraped out. Therefore, they are simply reacting. As I said, even a muscle will give what you call a galvanic twitch if you put the electricity, no thought in it. And that's what played out for real. After the Adriana Young incident down from where I live here, when that played out there, Mr. Mohammed funded the whole effect, funded the buses to take them to camp, to park outside of Leonora police station, where my kids couldn't get home for 6 hours, blocked it. Then later, when the coroner inquest in Georgetown was being done, Georgetown Hospital, you had riots occurring by those people. So this is not speculation. They were looting, there was burning, there was motorcycle gang, creating all kinds of mayhem where members of Komal's organization had to shutter shop as similarly of the incident brought me into politics when in 1998 Indians were beaten in the streets of Georgetown. So I want to come back. This is not an academic discussion. Wynne has taken even a greater percentage of the lumping elements, my generation used to call it, or scrape heads as they call themselves, from the PNC. So I think either Komal or Professor Bodu said it, that those older folks who may go back to traditional voting patterns came out for them. But it's a minority now. They beat PNC in almost, Wynne beat PNC in almost every area of Region 4, all boys town, Plaisance, where Aubrey lives, Buxton, where David Hines comes from, Wynne beat out the PNC. So I want to say this, that we cannot just discount that going ahead, the PPP will have to be very much on their toes to guard against this. And coming back to what Professor Narayan said, I want to remind him, you may have authority, which is what the Constitution gives you and all that. But we saw what authority gave in 97. We saw what authority gave us in the whole of 2000. It doesn't give you power. Power lies in other institutions that the PPP do not control, right? Mao said power comes out of the barrel of a gun. And that's the bottom line when you're talking of the kind of politics Guyana has played up to now. Coming back to your question on the cabinet and all that, General Secretary Barrett Jagdeo of the PPP has already said there will be extensive changes. And if my memory serves me correctly, he mentions at least 7 cabinet positions will be changed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Tara will take a break at this point,
okay.
and we'll be right back.
Okay.
We're back. Dr. Tara, please go ahead.
Okay, Professor Narayan, your comment.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I like to tell Ravi Dev that my ignorance or intelligence are my own, and I'm very proud of them. Both. They are my favorite twins. And you can disagree without being so personal about things. Say I use language. That is the problem that we suffer from as a Guyanese society. When you're doing an analysis, you don't go and say, what happened there, man? Why didn't you go out and vote? And the man said, well, I didn't. You probe for answers. And when you probe for answers, you get. Let me just give you some preliminary results of what I found out. One, many people I spoke to, and this is a small sample, they didn't feel that their votes would count. And this is particularly in Region 5, that they didn't think their votes would count. Secondly, they said they don't see the benefits of voting. So they don't know why they should go out and vote. Because if they cannot see the benefits, then something is wrong. Either the messaging is bad, or perhaps the people feel like money that was distributed, they didn't get enough of it. But when I probe further, this is what I get, that some of the complaints as to why people were disenchanted is because of the representatives that the PPP had in the local districts. One, the people talk about bribery. Two, the people talk about prolonged delays in getting answers. And then some complain. I'll give you a simple example of some of the complaints. One guy in his 70s, he said to me, he said, Teach, all I want is to graze my goat. And they're taking up all the places. And I go further and further away to just graze the few goats that I have. And then he gave me a name and he said, talk to this man because he has cows and he was complaining more than me. And I did. It is the same complaint. The people do not see the benefits that should have accrued by the changes that are taking place. Now, the PPP should not take these things for granted and dismiss it as if it is intellectual, if it is academic or intellectual arguments. No, it is not. These are the things that once the results are there, you can go and examine the results and then try to implement them if they are correct. And so the thing that the PPP has to guard against, even though they have a majority, is unequal development. And this is one of the things I've continued to talk about. And Dr. Tara, you also addressed some of it in terms of the poverty level in this country. People are constantly being left behind, even though income might be increasing, but it is not increasing at a rate where people can have what they call, in Guyanese terms, good living.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that means, it's also subject to interpretation.
All right.
That's
Let me move over to Mr. Komal Singh, who's on the ground, who knows a lot about poverty and unemployment and employment. And I just want to say that income increases will take some time. America has been here in decades, over 2 centuries, over 3 centuries, and up to now they can't sort out the income equality situation. The poverty level in this country is 11%, and in New York City is 19%. Guyana is only a few decades, so it will take time. These are very complex issues, and the thing is that let's go now to a man who's there, who's trying to work to help solve this. Mr. Komal Singh, your views on that?
Thanks, Doc. I just want to pick up from what Professor said just now, just a little bit, so bring some more context to that conversation. Yes, I agree that it's a work in progress. The ruling party, PPP, still need to continue to look at ways and means of satisfying some of those issues and complaints that are still out there. It's something that cannot be done overnight. Over the last 5 years, quite a bit of work was done. And when you reflect them individually, they were all done in the intention to improve the way of living of our people. Many of those stuff that you just alluded to, sometimes you generally say you cannot satisfy everybody. I'll take Region 5, for example, and I know government has been moving across this country developing places for housing scheme. In those areas, many people used to mine cattle, and the cattle used to roam all over the place. And because of the housing development, they could not allow those cattle to continue to roam. And I am aware because I was part of bringing some of those relief to some of the community, especially in Wales, where government went ahead and prepared pastures and asked those people to take those animals into those open pasture. Some people are still reluctant in taking them into there. But like I said, it's a work in progress. People need to start getting used to. We cannot do things, it's not business as usual if you want change. You have to understand that there will be some disruption. And for that, government is not disrupting people and not creating an environment to satisfy them or help them in those areas. So pastures was created across this country. I just use that one example. So sometimes, yes, the sample test that we do on the ground sometimes it is accurate, but if you look at it from a perspective of if you take a bigger sample, what percentage would that one or two people reflect in those bigger samples? Some as it relates to poverty, Dr. Tara, we talk about this all the time. Guyana have an abundance of opportunity. The government of the day alone cannot help people to come out of poverty. Every single leader, the political parties, the opposition, have a constituent that they represent. They need to also represent those constituents while they're outside of government. They need to work with them to help them to capitalize on those opportunities. I'll give you one simple example, and this will help you to understand something. Where I'm living, they had about 150 Amerindian people squatting on a public dam. For the last 5 or 6 years, we were trying to get them out. I know under this government, they came about 3 or 4 times, offering them free land for them to remove from the dam and stop squatting. Every time the government comes, a couple of days after, other political parties come and say, hey, don't move, don't move. Now, government is creating an opportunity to better your living. The opposition and the other political parties should support those stuff. Because at the end of the day, the intention is not for political gain. The intention is to make our people, irrespective of which political party they support, is to make them life better. And it's for that reason I'm saying we all collectively, not government alone, not the government of the day, all the political leaders needs to work hand in hand to make sure that the constituents are properly represented. Don't wait until you're in government and then represent them. You need to represent your constituent outside of government also. And the environment creates an environment where you can do that. And I give that one example just now. And if, for argument, if they had allowed those people to move, 3 years ago, they would have gone into their own place. A year ago, government had to take a storm move and say, you must move out. And government offer all the free transportation, help them to get themselves set back in their own place. Those are some of the initiative government is using to help those people that are currently in poverty to bring them out of poverty. And I'm saying, as leaders, we should all support those moves, even though you're outside of government.
Mhm. All right, thank you. Professor Budu, you want to rejoin the conversation here?
Hey, yes. Well, you and Professor Narayan are two reputable social scientists. I would like to know which country in this world that is rapidly developing has not faced the problem of increased inequality and rising cost of living. There's no country that I know who has increased rapidly, developing rapidly, that problem didn't exist, right? And it is extremely difficult, right, to change that in these countries, simply because some people can make use of the opportunity. Some people doesn't know how to make use of the opportunity, right? And the people actually who can make use of the opportunity get on this train I used the last time, right, at the station, and they are reaping the benefits, but others doesn't know. So the question is, what can be done in Guyana to help to reduce that inequality and actually make people's lives a little better? And I think we have alluded to all of this. One of the problems that, and I've raised this over the last 3 years, and criticize the ministers of the government in this program about the messaging and the marketing for the program they're doing, right? Right? And I've seen no improvement. And I think that they need to maximize the use of all media platforms to inform citizens on how their lives will be improved from the implementation of their programs and policies. Just look at the ministry website, for example. They are very poor across the board. Building a great website is very easy these days. They have to publish their accomplishment, collect and make available pertinent data, and actively maintain these sites. Right? They can pay bloggers to inform social media crowd and to respond to false information. The other thing I've actually raised over the last 3 years, and of course nothing I've seen in the public domain about it, is a master plan. Now, for our viewers who don't understand what a master plan, let me explain that very briefly, because I'm a civil engineer. A master plan is a blueprint, or many blueprints, showing how the government policies will impact, say, for example, interconnected transportation system, bridges, ferries, ports, airports, and the like. Land use, right? That we mentioned about the goat problem, right? How this be used for infrastructure and redevelopment, housing, commercial zones, and like public facilities. The master plan must get the public involved so they understand what will go in their neighborhood, right? They must become the owners or the stakeholders of that plan, right? It's a living plan, so it can be changed as needed. Telling people that we are building a 4-lane road for say from Wales to Puerto Rico, right? It's just a statement, right? A person in Berbice could care less. But if you have a master plan that shows how this road is part of an interconnected transportation system to efficiently move people, goods, and services, that person in Berbice can see how a product or a produce in Berbice can reach people in Bartica. Right? I could say more about the virtues of a master plan, but I will stop there because it shows a lot more can be done, and some of the issues that you have in Guyana, right, can be resolved through that. Because you have to reach the people, you have to make them understand. Because this was 5 years ago, this was an impoverished nation, right? You cannot change or transcend the mind of these people very easily. It takes a long time. And it needs a commitment from the government to do this, to make people understand in a very simple way, right? Now, I could continue, but I want to talk later if you give me a
Okay,
chance
all right.
about corruption.
Thank
But
you, Professor Raviji.
Ravi and Professor Naranko.
Yeah. Well, let me continue our discussion on the connection between social stability, if we want to call it that, or social unrest and economic performance. When the PPP came into government in 1992, fortuitously, there was a household income and expenditure survey done. So we had a baseline. But throughout the 90s, while Dr. Jagan tried his darnest, for example, even though the World Bank had specified that the government staffing levels had to be cut, and Mr. Hoyt had started that cutting, thousands of public servants had been let go. Dr. Jagan put a stop to that. He stopped that. Secondly, all other programs where he showed that an inclusiveness in bringing in equitable economic development. And yet you had this riots in the streets of Georgetown because the political leaders call out in those days, as I said, were called lumpen elements. Now we call them scrapers. And they came out in 98, January 12th, 1998, and committed mayhem. And I'm sure Komal would remember what happened then. What we are seeing now is that the economic development that has occurred, we may ponder and theorize all we want, but we know that this fella, Azruddin Mohammed, has taken that lumpen element, that scrape factor, out of the PNC. And he has already declared that if he is not declared president, they're going to be trouble. I am saying I like to take, as a businessman, I like to take care of the problem in front of me rather than 5 years down the line, right? Right now, this government, and this is what is being set up with this recount. It is being that class of people are being now told that they were cheated, and therefore we cannot ignore that or paper it over, right? I have an anecdote talking about development. When I was in Parliament, that Hamley Chase, a very decent fellow, member of the PNC, he went with Robert Corbyn to Buxton when the bandits were holed up there. And he told me, Ravi, when I went there to the line top, there were these young people hanging out. So while Robert was talking to some other people, he went over to some of them and said, "Man, can we get you, some development projects?" In fact, I had spoken to the owner of Patsan, right, who comes from Buxton originally, and he had told me, Ravi, I'm willing to give a $500,000 contribution for a chicken farm for there. Hamley told me when he came back, he said the young people told him, development, business, we want guns. You get me? Hamley has never backed off from that statement. So we have to understand the mindset of the people that Azruddin Mohammed has mobilized and their demand as to what they want. They want what they want, and they want it now, and they don't want this intermediate stage of saying that we got to work for it. That's the thing. And Professor Narayan, trust me, we do our surveys too. When I first came back to Guyana, Beto Ram and myself did the first TRPI poll, which Dr. Jagan took to Washington and to the Carter Center to speak to them. And we keep on doing polling very quietly at the ground level. And after the elections are over, Beto plans to have a polling institute in Guyana that will do full-time work, both for corporate Guyana and for the government. Anyhow, but to come back to that, that is what we have to look at very, very carefully, what's ahead for this government. Not just...
That goes back to... You're finished, Raviji?
I'm done. Thank you.
All right. Professor Narayan, that goes back to a question of the propensity for immediate gratification of many people. So, your comments?
Yes. No, I'd like to make a comment first on what Professor Boudou said. Yes, and I don't want to be misconstrued. I'm not saying that the PVP has not done an excellent job. As a matter of fact, if you look back at the intent of this program, we are saying in the future. I was not commenting on what is and what was in the past. I was saying what is in the future. You have this information, what they should require. And Professor Boudou answered the question when he talked about a master plan. Yes, they are going to be, rapid underdevelopment in areas. Secondly, there are going to be rapid inequality, socioeconomic inequality. Those are expected. Now, where do you go from there? Given the fact that some evidences of this are surfacing, it is not how well you do polls or anything like that, it's how well you implement the policies to address the problems. And so that is where the PVP needs to go. Yes, Ravi may be right, but in terms of anticipatory violence, I'm not an expert on that. And so I would think, going back to my elementary school days, when they say, fail to prepare is to prepare to fail. Mm-hmm. If you go on what Ravi Dev is saying, yes, that there is the anticipation of violence, are there preparations? They might not be able to quell the violence, but at least they will know that when the violence is coming and how to deal with it. Whether it be prolonged, whether it be just limited, who knows? I am not going to go there and anticipate violence just because of Azruddin buying scrape heads or who he can buy. The purchase of ignorance has no bottom. Like my
All
my
right.
dad always used to tell me that intelligence has its limit, ignorance does not. So I defer to Ravi on that one, and maybe he's correct, but I still like to think that the government is preparing for some such consequences, and if it does, that it can be limited.
All right. Thank you. Now we will do a final round here quickly. The I want you to comment on some of the prospects of the future. What are the projects the government can do, infrastructure, etc. Now you know the government policy is taking government to the people, and they said they will put heavy emphasis on individual and communal advancement. So they'll focus on the family, religious bodies, and NGOs to work within the communities. So, Mr. Komal Singh, your thoughts on that?
Okay, thanks, Doc. Guys, I'll just a comment. If you guys, I'm not sure how many of you would have read the National Development Strategy Plan that was out since 2010. That document is currently being modified in keeping with the 2030 vision. If you looked at the document in detail, it has a very comprehensive development plan for Guyana, given where the economy was then and the projection. So many of the stuff that you're seeing happening today from an infrastructure standpoint is coming out of that document. It's a good document for you to review. It will give you a good insight on the blueprint that you're talking about as it relates to where this government wants to see this country going forward with. As it relates to going forward, yes, I think government is focusing. If you looked at the manifesto, wealth creation is a big part of that budget right now. Wealth creation comes with a set of things that need to be developed, and especially in the manufacturing sector, the regional logistics right now. Currently, there's huge issues regionally. So if we don't develop that regional logistics hub where we can move goods and services, then we'll have some serious challenge when the manufacturing industry gets up and running. And the infrastructure development needs to continue in this country for the next 5 years. It is the only way we can open up our land and create more areas for industrial and commercial development. We cannot do that if we continue to operate within the coastline. As you are aware right now, many of our businesses are on the coastal range, ranging within that 250 miles along the coastline. But because of all the global warming and stuff like that right now, government is spending significant amount of money in maintaining that sea defense. And for that, government is pushing a lot right now to get businesses move out of the coastal area and start going out in other rural area where they're on higher grounds. And they can't just do that by themselves, and that is why they're working on those infrastructure, especially the road network. The road network right now, if you look at it over the next 5 years, is going to open up a whole host of new area for farming, commercial, industrial, and residential area. And I think they need to continue to do that if we want to see this country grow and expand, and for people more comfortable in terms of accessing some of the hinterland area also for tourism and for recreational purposes also. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Professor Budu.
Yeah, I think what Komal said about development, I agree with, but I think sufficient. Let's just talk about development. They're going to build roads here and there. I want to go back to the master plan. You have to have the master plan. You have to show people how this is going to affect their lives, right? And I point out how the four-lane highway from Parika to Wales, right? What a person in Burbs may think about it. So it's important that messaging has to be there. You have to go to grassroots and let people know how it's going to affect their lives, and make them available to or allow them to make themselves available for the opportunities that arise through education, through training, right? That has to go hand in hand. Another thing that is very important, and you saw from the messaging that the last time, and I know Shamisa read out one of them, saying that we need to get rid of the corrupt PPP, right? They need to tackle corruption head on from top to bottom. You know, corruption is really a go-to word. And when I was in Africa and in Southeast Asia, when you ask people in all these countries how things are going, the first thing they mention is corruption. When you ask me, show me evidence of corruption, they don't know. They hear it from somebody else. Every country has corruption. There's no country. Denmark, for example, has a corruption perception index of 90, still not 100%. And still people debate that, right? They have to tackle corruption. And you know what? All of us, in a sense, is corrupt. And the way they do that is you have to have good morals and good ethics. And you have to teach that in school. Very early on, they have to teach that. And parents have to be involved because parenting is very important, right? And the government has to be more transparent in what they do. And one of the ways that you see from the messaging there is contracting, right? And I know as an engineer, both in academia and in practice, that there are various methods there in which you can get corruption. You know, in civil engineering, this government, as all the programs that Komal talked about, are all civil engineering activities. Billions and trillions of dollars are spent throughout the world, right? And wherever there's money, there's greedy people. And you're going to have corruption, right? But there are ways in which this can be done, right? To eliminate those corrupt practices, right? And I think the government must be involved, right, in making sure that people understand that it's a fair deal. People are getting contract, right, based on their ability to do work, right? So they have to do that. The other thing is bottom line corruption. The e-government government services are all corrupt. We know that. Since I was living in Guyana, you can't get a birth certificate unless you bribe somebody. And that can be solved by having e-government services and e-government. I spoke to this when we had the Prime Minister on, right? Now, there's now for nearly 4 years, and I've seen nothing. All the technology for that is already available a long time ago. I was in Estonia a few years ago, and within half an hour, I could set up a business, right? All online, right? Similarly, you could do in Denmark. Why can't do that in Guyana? There's an absence of standards and codes in Guyana. So you might build all of these infrastructure, right? And then what happens? Where's the quality? Where's the control? Where is the value for money? That needs to be looked at. I'm going to stop there.
All right, Professor Raviji.
Yeah, I would agree with the panelists who spoke just before me. We need to deal with all of these elements. Those are no question. But like I said, we'll have to prioritize and have our marbles set up so that we do what is right in front of us. And I think coming back to what's needed, I heard the General Secretary of the PPP say they're going to work with the PNC, try to cooperate with them. I would like to respectfully suggest that, yes, that could be, but why not also work with WIN ahead of time? Because you cannot simply write them off. The whole point of it is that the class they represent is the class that is disruptive, nihilistic, we can call them whatever fancy word we want. So they must be shown to have a stake in this government, and there has to be some efforts made in that regard. I agree totally with Professor Boudou on this notion of corruption. Even we saw that the PPP support within their strongholds dropped also, not as much as the PNCs, but they did drop. The WIN fellow did get votes from the Indian community also, even in my area here, Ocean View Island. They got 17 people. So the thing is, we must make concrete steps. 20 years ago, I had suggested that we adopt Lee Kuan Yew's, what he did in Singapore, to get Singapore very professionally run. And they are an exemplar to the world today. One of the things he did was to say that, first of all, he paid public servants very well. That when a public servant is behind his desk and is interviewing somebody, business person or whoever, he must not feel in any way inferior to them. He's somebody also of substance. That's the first thing. But across this now, he put that the government workers, if their assets are shown to be out of sync with their income levels, then as a lawyer, and I appreciated this, the burden of proof shifts to them to show where you got this money from. So if suddenly one of these ministers who's getting, let's say, $300,000 per month or $500,000 per month, suddenly has, and we know there were pictures of them, some of them, shown to have $100 million homes, then the burden of proof would shift to them. Show me where you got the money. Fair enough. Show me where you got the money. You just spent this. Or was it loans? Was it what? Show me where you got the money to do that. And I think that will go a very far way to addressing this level of corruption that is, the talk is very pervasive. Even Karl Marx says that when a peasant is living among everybody else has huts, he has no problem. But when that hut, then suddenly there's a palace that is put up next to it, then that's revolution time. And we don't want that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Professor Narayan.
Well, Doc, I agree with Dr. Budu that the dynamics of change means that you have to bring people along. And to bring people along, it has to be informed by adequate policies. How do you get adequate policies? And forgive me for going back. You have to do the needs-based analysis. Komal talked about this moving the people and the people didn't want to move. They did not, Komal. They did not go in beforehand. That piece of land that the people had that I'm talking about was given by a PPP representative who was taking bribes. And that presented problem. Now, if you want to negate the realities that the people are living, I would think that things will go awry. The PPP is now poised to look into some of the weaknesses that is realized by the number of voters turn out now. You cannot dismiss that's hypothetical or that's academic. It is real. And if that continue to dwindle and get less and less, the PPP stands to lose. It is better poised and to capitalize on everything that it has done, but it has to bring the people along. And in bringing the people along, like Dr. Budu said, you have to get the information so that these people show that how they stand to benefit or are benefiting from this. And once the president start talking about bringing, I'm going to take care of your trash, I'm going to take care of your drains, and we like your family, people begin to listen. You go back and look at one of the president's talk. This is not hypothetical. The president brought down his message to the people, and that needs to be exploited at a greater degree.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Well, it's very important that we remember what the president said, and that has been his most important focus now getting to power is to do work at the community level, individual level. A lot of emphasis will be placed on that, and that can eradicate or mitigate all existing social problems if you adopt that approach, because every community, they know they're involved in some extent in decision making, but they'll have better control over their lives and better empowerment programs that he's doing at this level. And that's why I'm saying that he can empower religious organizations, NGOs, the family itself. They are already doing that by giving them scholarship, free medical, free, well, not free house lot, but giving them subsidy. And they can set up this development bank, which will give loans to people who want to borrow with interest free. So the government is on track. They understand some of the weaknesses. I mean, we are highlighting them, but I think they have reviewed it and they know that as well. So they are going to implement and work directly with the communities. They have been working with them for over the last 4 years. They revolutionized the concept of political mobilization by going into the communities. Ministers are hardly in the office, they're out in the fields. And now they can redouble efforts in that direction, and you will see a lot activities will happen at the common street light and all these things. security cameras. All the drains with concrete drains, roads will be fixed. And other personal things that people have, the government will help, like loans and these things. So quickly, I'll give each one of you a minute to make your closing statement, and then I'll hand you over to Shamiza. Mr. Komal Singh.
Thank you, Doc. I just want to make a comment on our election before I close. You know that the people have spoken. We now need to move forward. We need to, at the close of this recount, which is almost taking place right now, I think maybe we have another 10 or 12 hours more before that will complete. But at the end of that, whatever is the outcome of that, we as a nation, we should all come together, accept the result, and that is declared by TICOM, and we should move forward collectively with a view to develop this country and to improve the lives of our people. The government alone cannot do it. It's a collective effort. And we should all work hand in hand going forward to make that a reality for our people and for our country. Thank you.
Okay, finish up. Professor Budu.
Yeah, I think the PPP now has the opportunity to continue the work they started over the last 5 years. I hope that a lesson was learned that they have to do some more work to bring the people along, right? But I'm convinced that they have the leadership to do that. President Ali has demonstrated, I said the last time, that he's a people's president, he's grassroots. And I think they just have to do some other messaging and take some other actions in regards to corruption and so on, right? And I think Guyana would be a place where all of us can be proud that to be associated with.
Thank you, Professor Raviji.
Yeah, very quickly, I'd like just to say that democracy is a mechanism that was invented by societies to make select political leaders. There are rules of democracy, procedural ones, which then are prefatory to the substantive rules, which is what the people really will feel and affect them. So if the leaders, as we are seeing now, do not want to uphold those rules and will challenge them without an iota of evidence, I think those leaders got to be called out, and the people themselves got to look at these leaders very much with distrust, because you played by the rules, you entered the game, and yet when you are called out by the umpire, which is the vote of the people, you don't want to come out. You can't have that. West Indian people, as a people, we are famous for walking, right? I remember Kali walking when he was in the 90s in one occasion in Port of Spain. We got to walk. The political leaders who are refusing to walk now, we have to call them out. Thank you.
Thank you, Raviji. Professor Narayan.
I think the PVP is better poised to do what is right for the continued development of the country. And I think Ravi was the one who pointed out to say that, yes, there are going to be changes at the administrative level, which I think is worthy from observations and feedback. And I also like to make a comment on this dialogue. And to me, this was a fruitful discussion where the variation in views is expressed. But that is only the beginning. It is from that variation that some kind of consensus can be brought about. Because you can see from the variation, if every person hold on to their views very rigidly, then there will be no consensus. And in every country, governing depends on consensus as well.
All right, thank you. Before I hand you over to Shamiza, I just want to extend Yoman Nabi greetings to Guyanese and even non-Guyanese on the occasion of Yoman Nabi tomorrow. Shamiza?
Thank you, Dr. Tara, and thank you to our panel. Tonight's discussion was indeed very fruitful. And going back to our main focus tonight, which was the does Guyana move forward, right? What should be the priorities? And I believe it was Dr. Dev that said a few weeks ago that you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink, right? And for me, the last 5 years, we have seen what this government has done. The people has to change their mindset, right? To Professor Buru and Mr. Narayan, to their point of having all these things. We can give them all of those things. And if they refuse to go to the website or they refuse to look at these things and make the most out of it, and that's what we're seeing. Our people are not doing their part. So the mindset of the people has to change, and I feel that's one way for Guyanese, as the government and the people, to enjoy the benefits of we're no longer a third world country, but we have to start thinking like we're a number one rated country in the world, right? All of this is going to go nowhere if the mentality of the people don't change. The same thing I see in the comments, a lot of people are speaking of corruption, right? Corruption goes both ways. And if you know of corruption, you should be speaking up, right? Corruption can be a once. It can't be only people in the government taking bribes and doing all these corruptive things if they're not people from the other side that are offering these bribes and all of these ways of corruptions, right? So we have to bring evidence. When we speak of corruption, we have to show what is the corruption, where is it, where is the evidence that we're speaking of when we speak of corruption. And then the third thing that we have to focus on, like, I don't know if everyone's watching, but we just had the president of the United States did some things to Venezuela, right? How will that affect Guyana going forward? These are all things that we have to look at. We have Maduro who's out there making threats to Guyana. And these are all things that we have to be, these are the bigger pictures that we should be focused on rather than the little petty things that are happening, which happens all over the world. So with that said, I do want to take this opportunity to thank our viewers for being here this evening, taking the time to be here with us. To our panel, thank you for taking the time to be here. Until next time, I am your host, Shamiza Ali, and this is the Guyana Dialogue. Good evening, everyone.
Good
Thank you.
evening. Good evening.
You
Uh, yeah.